Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Hogwarts Legacy is coming out in a couple of days and I think that we can all agree it is one of the most anticipated games of the year. It is a game I am personally very excited for and has given me an excuse to just ramble on about Harry Potter for a bit. Today I want to talk about the history of the Harry Potter games on PlayStation. In this video I am going to focus specifically on the mainline games and not the spin-offs such as the LEGO games. To be honest, I just wanted to talk about Harry Potter for a bit. I am more than happy to make individual videos where I focus more on a specific game, and if this video gets enough attention I may do a video on Hogwarts Legacy. Now let's get into the video. In November 2001, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was released. The game was a single-player action-adventure game, but importantly it was not a movie tie-in in the same way a lot of other games were at the time. The game instead leaned more towards the book, and this was understandable as the development for the game would have taken place at the same time as the film. This means that the character models and plot feel less like a cheap movie tie-in game and instead feel unique. This is what I believe helped make the game feel more magical. It meant that playing the game, reading the book and watching the movie all felt like different experiences. Throughout the game, players are able to explore Hogwarts, which for many fans was a dream come true. While exploring, players could find a number of collectibles, these being Bertie Bott's Every Flavour beans and famous witches and wizard cards. Players were also given the chance to partake in activities such as Quidditch, which was a great way of making the game feel more immersive. There are two things that stand out for me personally. The first is the musical score. John Williams' movie score will always be the sound of Harry Potter, but the score from the game was just as magical.
Meanwhile, the House Point hourglasses are slowly filling up.
I believe that this helped add to the game's uniqueness. The second point is the castle itself. The game managed to capture the personality of Hogwarts, making the game feel immersive but also showing the player just how much time and effort went into making this game. And how can we not talk about the greatest part of this game, PS1 Hagrid.
Hello Harry, it's me, Hagrid. Good to see you.
Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone review scores were average. I do believe that many fans of the Wizarding World hold the game quite close to their hearts and see it as one of, if not the best Harry Potter game.
If Harry Potter goes back to Hogwarts, he will be in mortal danger.
Ron, look!
Now let's move on to my personal favourite Harry Potter game, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. The game was released in November of 2002. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets seem to build off the Philosopher's Stone, with the game also being a third-person action-adventure game. Once again, players had the chance to explore Hogwarts, but this time Hogwarts had been expanded. While exploring, players can search for collectibles including Bertie Bott's Every Flavour beans and famous witches and wizard cards. Just as with the first game, players delve into dungeon-style levels in order to solve puzzles that will help you reach your objective. The game also came with some of the most terrifying sneak mechanics seen in my video game history.
Didn't you hear me, boy? I said, we're closed now. Go away. I don't know. Kids today.
To this day, I have no idea why these sections terrified me, but for some reasons, they did. The magical feeling from the first game is also seen here, with the music and design being just as unique. The game once again feels separate to the films, which I believe helped add to the magical immersiveness felt throughout the game. Quidditch also makes a return, which really does help add to the Wizarding World experience. As we will see in later games, without these activities, the game feels much more bland. The unfortunate upgrade in graphics, however, means that PS1 Hagrid has gone.
Hello Harry, it's me, Hagrid. Good to see you.
This was an unfortunate decision that I'm sure many of us still think about today. Despite this glaring issue, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is my personal favourite and is seen by many as one of the best Harry Potter games made. This is not just shown by fans, but also critics at the time who gave the game positive review scores. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban was released in 2004, which was 2 years after the Chamber of Secrets. This gave the developers more time to work on the game. The game was the final in what I consider to be the magical trilogy of Harry Potter games. Of course, this does not include spin-offs, but for the time being, let's pretend like they don't exist. The Prisoner of Azkaban built on the success of the Chamber of Secrets, with the gameplay being fairly similar. As with the previous two games, The Prisoner of Azkaban follows the book and not the film, which once again adds to the unique magical feeling of the game.
Harry and Ron got up bright and early in preparation for their first Defense Against the Dark Arts class. However, not everyone was quite as lively that morning.
The big difference with this game was the shift towards the trio, instead of previous games where the player only controlled Harry. Players were able to switch between the three players throughout the game. Each player had a different set of spells which would have to be implemented at certain points throughout the game. This added a unique element, especially when it came to puzzles, where players would have to use all three characters and their unique skills in order to solve them. The players were also still able to explore the grounds of Hogwarts. However, there was no Quidditch. This is probably because EA released the Quidditch World Cup. Despite this, The Prisoner of Azkaban was still an amazing game. The magical feeling from the other two is still there, and its unique art style meant that it felt separate to the film. Unfortunately, it was seen as a downgrade compared to the other two, with the game receiving mixed review scores. Despite this, it's still seen by fans as one of the best Harry Potter games ever made. The first three games will always be felt that way by fans. However, the lack of PS1 Hagrid really does leave a lot to be desired. Unfortunately, after this, the Harry Potter games began to change direction.
Harry Potter and his friends Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger travelled by portkey to the Quidditch World Cup final, where they saw Ireland defeat Bulgaria.
Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire was released in 2005, and the first thing you will notice about the game is the change of the cover. You can tell straight away that this game is going to focus very closely to the films and move away from the books. The character designs were also a lot more similar to that of their movie counterparts. For me, this took away some of the magic seen in the previous games. To add to this, the action-adventure style game was removed, and instead the game became a linear action game. This did not impress fans or critics. Players were still able to play as all three members, with the game relying heavily on the trio working together to get through the missions. The magic from the previous games had disappeared from the Goblet of Fire. For me, it did feel like a cheap movie tie-in game. The gameplay was very repetitive and did not feel enjoyable. Players are forced to replay the game multiple times in order to gain enough shields in order to continue.
Back again, eh? And there are still several shields to collect.
This seems like a lazy way of extending the gameplay to make the game feel longer. The AI in this game is notoriously terrible.
No, don't jinx them. We'll get pus on us.
Brilliant! Oh, a bean!
The lack of explorability for me does make this game feel pretty dull. Players are able to fly on broomsticks again, but to be honest, this is pretty bad. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire was a huge disappointment, especially when you look at the games that came before. I believe that the move towards following the movies was a bad call, and perhaps the games would have been better continuing what they were doing before. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire received mixed reviews, and I think most fans would agree that it was a major downgrade from The Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh, a bean!
Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix was released in 2007, and once again we can see that the game is going to follow the movie in the same way that the Goblet of Fire did. It does seem that the developers listened, however, as the game returned to its action-adventure roots. Before we start, I do just have to say that I believe that this might be the most realistic Hogwarts design to date. Despite this amazing design, however, Hogwarts still feels dull. It doesn't have the same magical feeling that I felt in previous games. This is because there are no magical places to explore and there aren't any fun puzzles to solve. The Marauders map feat was a nice inclusion, but this also becomes frustrating, especially when some of the surfaces are close to the colour of the prints. The gameplay compared to the Goblet of Fire was much better, with a wizarding duel system being introduced. But the wand play is definitely new, and it may actually be the best thing about this game. I must say that seeing Harry wave his wand around like a lunatic for most of the game was extremely enjoyable. The advanced physics in this game were also an upgrade on previous games, allowing us to throw things around the place for no particular reason at all. Players spend large portions of the game doing fetch quests, and this is really not enjoyable. Order of the Phoenix for me was an upgrade on the previous game. Giving the player the ability to explore means that there were elements I loved about the Order of the Phoenix. Despite this, the gameplay was pretty dull. The game was unable to recreate the magic scene in the first 3 games, and this is despite bringing back the ability to explore Hogwarts. The game received mixed review scores by critics. There are some positives that can be seen in this game, but it did not live up to the expectations the fans had. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince was released in 2009 and followed on from the gameplay seen in the Order of the Phoenix. Players once again had the ability to roam around Hogwarts, but only as the game goes on. Certain points of the castle have to be unlocked by completing parts of the story. The game definitely feels less dull than the Order of the Phoenix. Classes make a return to the Half-Blood Prince. This was a nice addition, but they really seem to rub this into you. You seem to be creating potions all the time. Travelling around Hogwarts is also slightly different to that seen in the Order of the Phoenix. Instead of having the Marauders map footprints, you instead have the help from everyone's favourite nearly headless ghost, Nearly Headless Nick. This was an interesting change and did add new elements to the game, especially when it came to the dialogue between Harry and Nick. The wrist-breaking wand makes a return, but has been tweaked a little bit. Harry's hand doesn't seem to fly around as much as it used to. This has led to the dueling system being slightly better than in the Order of the Phoenix. You cannot interact with students around the school, which is disappointing as this is an area that they could have built upon from the previous game. Now, how can I talk about this game and not talk about possibly the greatest element, and that is the inclusion of Ron Strutt. It is a remarkable part of the game and almost lives up to the heights of PS1 Hagrid.
Hello, Harry, it's me, Hagrid. Good to see you.
Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince definitely improved certain aspects seen from the previous game. It still feels like a cheap movie game. The game feels like a missed opportunity, and with a few more elements added, the game could have been so much better. Reviews for the game were once again mixed, and fan scores were not much better. Despite it being better than the Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince didn't come close to the magic scene in the old games.
Have been disappearances, murders, but I say this. Your ministry remains strong. We will keep the people safe.
Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 was released in 2010 and saw a complete change to the gameplay. The game left the open world action-adventure genre and moved towards a third-person shooter. Harry Potter suddenly became Call of Duty.
Verse 6. Going down.
The wands may have well been guns. I mean, the fire rate on these wands alone was impressive. Players were also able to cover behind walls as if playing GTA 5. When players weren't experiencing the horrors of modern wizarding warfare, they were instead having to play through the worst sneak levels ever made. I will be honest, there is not much to say about this game. It was not enjoyable at all, and I don't really know who it's made for. It felt like the developers had just given up. EA really dropped the ball with this one, and that is saying a lot when you consider EA's track record. There was not much to be happy about in this game. The shooting mechanics were not impressive, the levels were not that enjoyable to play, and the sneak portions were just tedious. In all honesty, the game was very disappointing. Fans and critics did not like this, and this can be seen in the review scores from both, with the game receiving mostly negative reviews. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 was more of the same. It was still Harry Potter met Call of Duty, but admittedly the gameplay was slightly better. For example, the shooting mechanics had been improved, but the wand spells just felt like using different weapon classes. The last two games were really disappointing considering what EA could have done. The filler missions were gone, but there just wasn't enough difference between part 1 and part 2. It was interesting to play as other characters such as Neville, and the Battle of Hogwarts had some interesting segments, but I think it is fair to say that these last two games are definitely the worst in the series. The game felt like a cash grab, and it was not a great way to end the series. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 received mixed and negative review scores.
That common bond we share is the legacy of Hogwarts.
Now viewers, how could I not talk about the newest game in the Wizarding World franchise to be released? It is the whole reason as to why I wanted to make this video in the first place, and the nerd in me has been waiting a very long time for this game. Hogwarts Legacy is one of the most anticipated games in a while. The game will see players step foot into the wizarding world of the 1800s and will be an open world action RPG. Players will be able to create their own characters and will be able to explore a number of locations including the Forbidden Forest, Diagon Alley and Hogsmeade. I am hoping that Hogwarts Legacy will be the game I have been waiting for. I may do a longer video on Hogwarts Legacy, but this will depend on whether anyone wants to see it. I am really interested to hear about your opinions on the Harry Potter games. Which one is your favourite? I hope you enjoyed a different type of video today. Thank you so much for watching.
The choices you make now will define the legacy of Hogwarts.